Hello, welcome back everyone to the ITversity YouTube channel, and in today's Apache Kafka video, we are going to talk about something called topics inside Kafka. Now remember, we have this series which talks about Apache Kafka basics, and we call this series as Apache Kafka for beginners from zero to hero. And by watching the videos in this particular series, you will be able to learn everything about Kafka, how it works, and internals and whatnot. So before we jump into the video, in case if you have not subscribed to the ITversity YouTube channel, please consider doing so, and let's jump in. Okay, so far we understood that Kafka is nothing but a distributed message queue, and you have these producers who are sending the data and then consumers who are receiving the data, and that's what we have discussed so far. But how does this happen? For example, if a producer is sending the data to the Kafka cluster, where it gets saved or how it gets saved, right? So how does the internal architecture of Kafka looks like? So let's have a look at that here. Now, if you broadly look at this picture, what you see here is at the top you have these producers. So I have kept only two producers. You have the web server and the chat server. And then you have the consumers, again, the security system and Spark. I mean, just to get a context, right? Now, inside the Kafka cluster, you can see that there are 4 machines, and I have named them broker. So broker is nothing but a server which is running Kafka. So typically when you install a Kafka in a production setup or a production environment, you want to handle huge number of messages, right? So you will be typically setting up a Kafka cluster for, let's say, 10 machines or 100 machines. So each machine where Kafka is running is called a broker. So here you can see in my diagram, there are like 4 machines. So you have like broker 0, 1, 2, 3. And that can be any number of machines actually. And while you are installing Kafka, you can set up all these things. And we have the usual producers and consumers in this picture. Now what happens is, imagine the producer want to send some data. Like in this particular diagram, you can see the web server. I have written on the left hand side of the web server that it would like to send the data that is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I mean, just to give some random data. So each one is considered to be a message. So A is a message, B is a message, C is so on and so forth. And the chat server, on the other hand, has some message like ZZZ, XX, whatever it is, right? So when the producer is sending the data actually goes and gets saved in one of the brokers. In this example, you can see that the web server is sending the data to the first broker, that is broker 0, and A, B, C, D, E, F goes to broker 0. And the chat server is sending the data, and that is going to broker 2. Now, how does this work? I mean, why the web server data is going to broker 0? That's where the idea of topics comes into picture. Topics are very important with respect to Kafka. Now, how do I explain this? See, imagine that there are multiple producers and all of them are sending data. Now, there should be some way to distinguish these messages, right? For example, I should have some provision to say that, okay, this data is coming from web server. Now, this data is coming from chat server. Otherwise, all the messages will get like mixed up, right? So we don't want that to happen. So that's where topics comes into picture. The moment you set up a Kafka cluster, the first thing that you do is you will define something called a topic. Think about a topic like a queue to which the producer can send the data and the consumer can read the data. So in this picture, you can see that I have defined 2 topics. One is the topic web, the other one is the topic chat. And once you define a topic, and then let's say the producer starts sending the data to this topic will occupy space in one of the broker. So this is just like, how do I say this, creating a WhatsApp group. So imagine, maybe not an exact analogy, but imagine you're creating a WhatsApp group. Now, if you create a WhatsApp group, does that occupy some space? No. But the moment you start sending messages to your WhatsApp group, it will eat your storage on your phone, right? So very similar to that, in this particular cluster, I create 2 topics, web and chat, and there is no space or anything. But when So internally what happens, Kafka will allocate, a broker to store the messages that will be landing on this topic. So now what happens when the web server starts sending the data, that's the producer, the topic web will start storing the data on broker 0. I mean, that is how it is configured, and the topic chat will start storing the data in broker 2. So that is why you see the data is landing on these two brokers. And now what happens when the consumer want to consume the data, they want to read the data, say security system and Spark, they connect to these topics. And in turn, they receive the data from these brokers. So you can see security system is reading from, broker 0, and then Spark is reading from broker 2 from the respective topics. So the idea is topics are designed to isolate your messages so that the producer can send data to respective topics and the consumers can read from there. Think about it like a central place where the data will be landing from the producer and the consumer will be connecting to read the data. And depending on your requirement, you can create any number of topics, right? So like in this example, there are two separate stream of data that I would like to consume. One is the web server data, one is the chat server data. So I define two topics. You can define any number of topic, it doesn't matter. But internally, the Kafka cluster should have enough infrastructure to store the messages and consume the messages, etc. So I hope the concept of topic is very clear to you. Without the topic, there will be no way to identify which messages belong to which producer or which consumer. While defining the topic, the producers and consumers can connect using the topic to send and receive the data. But remember, if you just define a topic, it is just like creating a WhatsApp group. But the moment you start sending and receiving, that's when it starts occupying the space. So I hope the idea is clear, and there are more things to talk about about topics and all these things, which we will be covering in the next lesson. Thank you. And in this week's Apache Kafka video, we learned all about topics. Consider liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and let us know what do you think about the video in these comments. And also, if you want us to come up with similar tech content, then please let us know in the form of comments what are the topics you want us to come up with. So this is Raghu signing off. I'll see you with another brand new video. Thank you.